And that was so beautiful. That's the same song we sang at my sister's funeral too. I know I'm great. Just so that you know, I'm silly things too about my mom. Last night I looked up in the dictionary just for the heck of it to look up the word mom. It said mom, a noun, one's mother, a person who gives birth. Somehow they didn't do it for me. Because my mom was a verb. Everything about her was action, from the way she was spiritually, the way she was with her children, to the way she was with my father. She was a woman of action. I'm taking this off. It's really just so you don't hug me on the left side. This past Easter, just barely, my mom had a big Easter egg hunt. We have it every year. She hides money and candy and things in the eggs and in the pinata. We do all this. We have a big dinner. My dad makes a really yummy dinner, and it's a really fun party to go to. This year, as the kids were running around throwing some of the candy eggs and the money eggs and the hard-boiled eggs in their basket, we started noticing that the buckets were filling with yolk. And she had turned on the water, she thinks, or someone had turned it off, but they were dyed raw eggs. And I said, Mom, this is a funeral story that you've just done. I hope to be telling it a lot longer. Oh, wait. But I'm going to tell you some stories about my mom, these memories that are fun, because to me, it's too bad that you wait till something happens to get together and to have fun reunions with people you love and don't see very often. And my favorite funerals are the ones that remind you of the happy things of someone's life. The first thing I wrote down my paper was when we lived in over kind of down by the old mill on 65th South. And there was a scary boy in our neighborhood. I can't tell you his name because who knows, maybe his mom's here. He was the mean guy, and everyone was afraid of him, everyone. And one day, when he was probably about, 12 or so, 14 years old, he parked his bike in our driveway behind my mom's car. She was in it. And she said, will you move your bike? Because I've got to go. He said, no. And she said, really, you've got to move your bike because I've got to go. He said, you move it. And she said, I will never forget this as long as I live. The difference between your mom and me is I'm going to run over your bike. And she said, move your bike. He said, no. She ran over it. And she pulled out of the driveway and said, when your mom asks you what happened to your bike, tell her to give me a call. And he never called. So we were free. My mom painted our lunch sacks every morning with Winnie the Pooh or something, some figure that we love in Disney. She had a little cartoon book that showed us how to do it, and she did it every night. I thought she did it because she made homemade bread and our sandwiches were this fat. And she was not, there was not like big treats in there or anything. I think she was trying to make it look like it was more fun than it was. But our friends were jealous of our lunch sacks. She made homemade suckers every time we had a birthday and took them to our class at school. The flat kind that you made that ended up this big with a little teeny stick and cinnamon every time. And she brought them to school for our friends. Another story kind of like the bike is we were driving down the street. She was probably as old as I am now. She had just washed her car. And she was driving down the street and some boys had snowballs and they were throwing in the cars that were going by. And she said, don't throw this at my car. I just washed it. And they threw it. And she jumped out of the car, chased them down, and threw snow in their face. And she said, you you'd go home and tell people that you just got creamed by a 52-year-old woman. My mom knitted us Christmas socks that started out about this big and ended up about this big, and it was really hard for Santa Claus to fill those up. If you looked at the video, you can see those in the background. Her signature goodbye was, "I love you more than the sky." When she came to your house, you clicked your porch lights on and off until you couldn't see them anymore, and they honked the horn. And when you leave their house, they click the lights back and forth and you honk on them. Like Christy answered, they sing in harmony on your birthday. My mom called everyone and says, "Don't forget it's so-and-so's birthday." And we all know she does that, but we pretend we remember it on our own. But every conversation you have with my parents is the same. When you call my dad and say, "Let me get your mother." And when you call and my mom answers, she'll say, "Let me get your dad." And they talk to you in stereo, so you're like having a conversation. My mom, at girls' camp, she was called to be a girls' camp leader when I was in Young Women's, and she had never gone to Young Women's as a child because she converted to the church when she was 19 years old. And we were getting ready to go on a hike, and I looked down and she had on some espadrilles. I don't know if you remember what those are. They kind of have rope around the bottom. They're kind of, kind of casual / nice shoes. And I looked down and I said, "Mom, you probably want to change your shoes before we go on this big hike." And she said, "The paper said, wear your most comfortable shoes." And these are my most comfortable shoes. They weren't after that, I'm sure. My mom was a kept woman. We used to tease her about if my dad passed away before she did, how in the world we were ever going to take care of her in the manner that she was used to. Because she was loved by my dad, and she knew it. And she had a gourmet meal every night that he made for her. And she would call me sometimes, and I'd just be walking home from work and dumping things on the counter, and she'd say, "What are you going to have for dinner?" And I'd look around and say, "Grapes." Jawbreakers? I don't know. I haven't got that far. And she'd say, "We're going to have a little salmon and rice pilaf and maybe some asparagus and sun-dried tomatoes and a salad and some homemade coconut ice cream." And I was just... She used to say she'd rather be passed from kid to kid than live with us a month and a half and go anywhere else. My mom talks to everyone. And when I was little, sometimes I didn't like to go with her places because I thought she knew everyone in the world. It turns out she just talked to everybody in the world. And there's somebody in the grocery line I would think had been her long-lost friend from college. They'd separate, and that was it. Our friends would come over and stay and hang out with my mom. If we weren't home, she'd say, "Oh, your friend came over." I said, "Well, where are they?" She said, "Oh, we played Atari and had a quesadilla," and then she had to go. She loved to play that. My mom never complained. And if you ever were tired or had things to say about all your young children, she'd say, "Well, by now I'd had 6 kids under 7. What was your problem?" So you could never really say, because it looked, you were shamed immediately. My mom took care of herself, and she called it getting cute. She'd say, "I'm going to the bathroom to get cute." And she did look cute. She looked beautiful all the time. She used to do a facial, and we'd go purposely talk to her when she had it on because it would crackle all over her face and she couldn't move her mouth, and we'd ask her all these questions. My mom loved Lucky Charms, not the cereal, just the charms. So for Mother's Day, we'd dump out a box of cereal and pick through, get all the marshmallows out and put them in a bag and give them to her for Mother's Day. She would take me because I was the oldest, and I babysat a lot. All those kids. And sometimes she'd say that she needed me to go to the grocery store with her. And we'd go and open up a box of those pink and white yucky animal crackers with beads all over them and eat them by the time we got to the thing. And she'd say sometimes we just need to get away, us moms. My mom could write a letter that would fix any problem. If one of her loved ones was any kind of mind. She was a pit bull that could write a letter that would change a problem like an attorney. I remember going with her to the store to take back some cheese that wouldn't melt. Just bugged her. It stayed in a square, so she left it in the pan, all sweaty and greasy, and took it into the night and said, look at this. I'm not eating this, and I'm not paying for it. I want the kind that melts. What kind is the kind that melts? And being horrified, but I'd probably do the same thing now. She used to say she was only as happy as her saddest child. And she always said, if it's not one thing, it's 10 others. I told some brothers and sisters that I would tell a story before I tell something that my dad wanted me to say. About the t-shirts, because it's something that our family laughs about on a continual basis. My mom and dad went on a trip to San Diego to see Melba and her Carrie and the kids, and on their way they stopped in Las Vegas and saw some t-shirts. This was the newest thing you could put a photograph on a t-shirt. They'd never seen anything like it in their lives. It was so, and they were really expensive, but it was just, so technological and so cool. And so they made all of us a t-shirt with the pictures they had in their wallets. So now I had a picture with my own face on it that I was supposed to wear around. And they wrote some funny things on the bottom of them, the things that they thought about us that made the shirts extra embarrassing to wear. Mine said Foxy Laura. Lisa said Classy Lisa. Smooth Doug. Sweet Caroline. Special Linda. Hers was the worst. Danny the Great. And Lovable Christy. Caroline's, sweet Caroline's, at least it made sense. We were embarrassed to wear them because they had our own self. Now, if your mom and dad had them on, then you could, but when it's your own stuff. So then we went to California later, and they wanted us to wear the shirts because no one was wearing the shirts. They didn't understand why no one was wearing the shirts. So we decided as a group of kids that we were going to wear them in the van on the way down there. To wear them in the van, get out of Vegas where nobody would care about what we had on, and then we'd lose the shirts. They're dirty now, we wore them all the time. Oops. So we got to Las Vegas and we all had these same shirts on. And we went somewhere to eat because it's cheap in Vegas. You can get a good dinner for 99 cents then, probably. So we all got out, the same shirts on, and we were walking along. They weren't white shirts, they were yellow shirts. So we were all getting in the car, and a man that was a little drunk said to my dad, good heavens, Noah, how many animals can you get in that ark? And my dad said, all I need is a jackass, hop in. And we just sung down to the water. But it's such a good story for the next 20 years. So we gave them an apron one year for Father's Day that said, we love you with our handprints. Love, Foxy Laura, Classy Lisa, Special Linda, Danny the Great, Smooth Doug, Sweet Caroline, and Lovable Christy. My mom was my hero. When I had been diagnosed with cancer again, and I went to go get a port just this week. And my husband and I were sitting in the room, and he said, this is the first time in anything you've had that was big that your mom and dad haven't been here in your life. They came to chemo, they came to everything. And just right after that, I could hear my voice, my dad's voice down the hall saying, Laura Nilson. They are good parents. They made a good team. Before she died, the day before, she left her wallet at Costco. And so rather than go home, or she left her wallet at home and couldn't shop at Costco. So rather than go home, she stopped by my home. And we had a visit that was sweet for my son and for me. My daughter was home. And she said, the other day I woke up an hour early and I couldn't fall back to sleep, so I prayed for you for an hour. Don't ever pray for me. And this time, when I was diagnosed, my dad gave me a blessing. And I don't know if he's thought of it since, but just Frank and I went because we hadn't told anyone else in the family. And I went to get the blessing. And one of the things that he said was, this time will be hard. You'll have some times that are discouraging. But I want you to know that I feel impressed to say that there are people on the other side who you know who will help you. And whose love for you will be palpable and you'll know they're there and you'll know who they are. And at the time I thought it was my sister. But what a sweet blessing it is, my mother. Because she takes no prisoners. And she will fight my cause, I know that. And she was in the hospital. And we were all in kind of a bad way. It was the second day and we knew that she was not living. The first night, one of the nurses was hanging some fluid to keep her organs good. And she was crying as she was hanging some things. And I kind of put my arm around her. I said, how do you do this all day long? How do you work in shock trauma where everybody is crying and everyone is frantic and everyone is, so upset and angry? And she said, sometimes I drive home for a long time. She said, I want to tell you something. That when you walk in this room, God is here. And we can all feel it up there. That when you walk in this room, it feels different than it does in other places because God is here. And every single nurse we had said that to us. That is a testimony to me that this gospel is true. She was there, and all of us could feel her, and we could feel God there. My mom wrote to all the missionaries every week, regardless, and I added up how many letters that is. It's 420. She never missed. You could plan on her. And my dad had told me a story that even I didn't know. I was crying when he was telling it to me in the car. But I wanted to share a little bit. I'll tell it in my own, so I know that it's in time. He said, our life together was filled with many sweet endearments. I used to choose odd times to sing music and lyrics from a Lawrence Hart song in the 1938 stage production called I Married an Angel. I usually only sang the first 3 verses. Have you heard I married an angel? I'm sure that change will be awfully good for me. And then he say, la, 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 for the rest. For a couple of years before their mission in 2000, my dad and she taught an eternal marriage class to some college-age class students in the LDS Institute. And while they were doing that, they found a true story about a man who had been married for 50 years to his wife, and my parents were married almost 53. And they had a code word that was Smiley. It was an acronym that meant something. It was a true story. And this couple would write Smiley in different places in their house for the other one to find. And when they found it, they were supposed to put it somewhere else. So it would be written down, or it might be in the flour, or the sugar, so that when they went to bake something, it was in there. And their job when they found it was to write Smiley somewhere else for that other person to find. They wrote it in the dew on the windows and on the rainy windows and all over their house. And after they heard that story, my parents decided that they were going to adapt this into their own lives. My mom and dad's bathroom and the children's bathroom when we were growing up were kind of back to back. And so my mom would take a shower and then she'd go into her bathroom to, get cute, she'd say. And while my dad was in the shower, she would go. And that meant Smiley, S-H-M-I-L. I don't know if that was exactly the right beat, but that's the story. And she would write it in the shower so that he would see it when he would get in. And what that meant was, see how much I love you. And they do that every day. His next favorite story is that my mother bought him a set of books because he loves them. And on his 22nd Father's Day, they gave him the book of the Apostle Bruce R. McConkie's 6-volume series about the Messiah. It was called The Promised Messiah, and it went through the Millennial Messiah. And inside each of the covers of all of us wrote a little testimony to him. And my mom wrote one that was particularly sweet. And she talked about how she'd been tying knots for months about getting the gift because it was very expensive. And there were a lot of other needs at the time. But I remember this very well. And it was a sacrifice to give it to her. And when she gave it to him, her testimony said, I want, that they wanted to be more Christ-like in their relationships with each other and with our family. He later took the books up to Elder McConkie, who signed each one. And as he looked up at my dad, knowing that it was a sacrifice to buy the books, he said, you didn't know how much she loved you, did you? But he did. He did, and we do. She was a good person, and we were good people together. She loved this gospel. She loved her scriptures, and if they were out there and you saw them, you can see they look like a coloring book. And I've heard often that a Bible that's falling apart usually belongs to a person that isn't. And that was her. I know that God lives, that life is hard. But when my mom was hit, my dad said it was the kindest thing that God could have done to him, because she was taken and innocent, with no suffering, no problems. And that it would have been hard for him to live if she had ever suffered and had problems. So although it's hard, it was a blessing, because she went quickly to be with the people that she loved. We all have a mountain to climb. And my friend at work told me some people have a heavy backpack full of rocks. Some people have a lunch sack. Some people have a sandwich bag. Some people have other people carrying their stuff. But the people that get to the top, that have the heavy backpack, are stronger for the walk. I loved my mother. We all did. And I love this church because of the examples of my parents. And I love the Lord because of that too. We will never be the same because of this loss, but we are ever so much better for have had something so great